Hey guys, I'm going to talk about Ready Player One for a bit. I'm going to talk about why it sucks. So, sit back, grab a beverage, and let's get into it. One of the first things that I want to talk about, one of the first things that I want to try and dispel is this idea that it's mindless entertainment. It's not really that, or at least it's not trying to be. It's what I expected, and when I got to the theater, and within the first 15 minutes of the movie, it's what I thought I was going to get, because the movie wastes very little time with any establishing the main character, Wade. It spends very little time on that. It wants to drop you into the action almost immediately. It establishes the context, the premise, the setting, all of that, everything except the main character, and it does it quickly. And then it drops you pretty soon after that into a race within the game Oasis, in which Wade is trying to get the first key. And so I'm like, oh, and it's actually pretty cool. I enjoyed the first few minutes of the race. And I was like, okay, like, if this is what this is going to be, where it's like, okay, here's the premise, here's what the characters are trying to do, and then they're just trying to do it. I'm like, okay, like, I watch movies like that sometimes, just like, where it's like, you know exactly what it is, here's what the character wants, there's not a whole lot to the main character, but he could do these cool things, and then just, like, I'll watch that. Like, I'll watch John Wick 2, like, I'll do that. Like, all John Wick 2 is John Wick wants to kill a dude, and the whole movie is him trying to kill the dude, and it's fun, and you can, there are enough elements of it that you can buy, and you can, like, okay, like, I believe this, and you can just enjoy it. But that's not what Ready Player One is. Ready Player One does have something that it's trying to say. And so that's where the problem is like, it's one thing if it's what you think it's going to be, which is a bunch of mindless fun, but it's not that. I mean, debatably. I mean, I think you could make John Wick 2 a better movie by giving it, just more. But the point is that it's what it says it is, and I'm not saying Ready Player One says it's mindless, but that's, like, I've heard people say that. But the point is, the problem is the stuff that's in between the fun action, like in between the things, like the references and the references and the over-the-top graphics and the action, like what's the stuff that's in between that, that's kind of what I'm talking about. And the stuff that's in between is not very good. So part of the problem, and or at least one of the biggest things that's going to jump out, you're going to be like, okay, this is a problem, is, and I'm sure people complain about this, is the main character is uninteresting. This is one way of describing him. He's not very quirky, he's not very fun. And that's just part of the problem, though, because the problem isn't like he needs to be, like, wacky or he needs to have, like, fun things about him. He just needs to be distinct, right? That would be something, but that's only even part of the issue. Now let's talk about main characters for a second. I mean, characters in general, but more in particular main characters. So one thing that you want is I keep moving the chair back and forth because that's just how I am. I like pace, I pick things up, I fiddle with them. Stay focused, Jacob. So the problem with main characters, not the problem, the thing about main characters is that they have to be relatable. And this is because, like if some person is trying to relate a story to you and it's about something that you don't really understand, you've never been in that situation, it can be, if you don't have, like, a grasp of what they're talking about, you can't necessarily relate to it. Whereas if it's a story that is in a context that you can relate to, that you understand, you will like latch onto that and be listening to what the person is saying, in theory, if you like the person. And that's part of it too. But you have to make them relatable. And part of how you do that is you have to give the character has to want something. they have to want something a lot. And that really helps you to kind of latch on and be like, oh, like I want things too in my life. I hope that this person, if you like them, I hope that this person is going to get what they want. That's part of it. But also they have to be flawed. They have to be flawed characters, because it's not just fun to like it's not just about overcoming the barrier, right? Like to the thing that they want. Like like a Deus Ex Machina, like in Greek plays, where at the, there's all these problems and all these things in the way, and then at the end of it, like they lower like a god on a platform, and he's like, it's okay, I'm gonna fix everything. The main character's gonna get what he wants, and the audience wasn't like, oh, I'm so glad he got what he wanted. Like, that doesn't work. Like on rare occasion does that work. One example I would say is Charlie Chaplin's Gold Rush. At the end of the movie, the character just randomly gets what he wants, but it's because he's worked so freaking hard the whole time, and it's all so funny and over the top and ridiculous that you're like, okay, I'll go with it. But for the most part, you want the character to have it's not just enough for the character to get what they want. You have to give the character a flaw that they have to overcome, because then it's like they've earned it, right? Like they had to become something more in order to get it. It's kind of like with shonen anime. Like, might be kind of an out there example for some people, but it's like characters are constantly having to develop and push what they can do mentally and physically, and people find that compelling. It's the same concept, and it is universal in storytelling. Like, it's everywhere. It's part of the hero's journey. It's like part of everything. So the thing is, like, Wade has flaws, right? Wade has flaws in this movie, but they aren't necessarily relevant to the rest of the plot, and he isn't forced to confront those flaws and deal with them even at his low point. He's never forced to adjust his behavior in any way. So that's the thing, really, is like, and it's not even just that, it's like, what are the stakes for Wade, right? So he wants the Easter egg, and I'm mostly assuming that people have seen this movie or have seen the trailer and understand what this is, because I'm basically just going to talk about it as if you've seen the movie, although if you haven't, you can probably pick up what I'm talking about. But like, he wants the Easter egg in the oasis, right? Like, that's what he's looking for. Like, and I understand why it's desirable in a general sense. What I don't understand is why it's important to him on a personal level, right? And that's the thing that the movie never gets into, and that's when it becomes a problem, because when you hit that low point, like, you have to have the character doing everything they can to achieve this one thing, but then they actually make it worse, and the thing they didn't want to happen happened, and it was their fault, and then they're like, okay, I have to take a step back and look at this. And that's when characters become interesting, and he's never really forced to do that. Like at the most, I could say that there is a point in the story, and I'm kind of jumping ahead on my outline here, but like, there's a point in the story where it'll be fine, where his stupidity, and this is one of the things about Wade, is for some reason, despite being really resourceful, and they imply in a certain part, like, he has like a photographic memory and stuff like that, like, despite all those things, he's stupid, which isn't a very compelling flaw, but like, he's kind of stupid, and his stupidity gets people killed, right? Maybe I should have warned about that, but I did say I was just going to talk about the movie. But anyway, like, it gets people killed, and it's people that were important to him and were one of the reasons why he was trying to get the Easter egg. And the movie never gives us a scene where he's like, okay, I just got people killed. It was 100% my fault. Like, he never stops to really examine that. The movie doesn't have time for that, which is so odd, but I'll get into that later. But that's like the whole point of a character, and it's the whole point of an arc, is like, what are the flaws? And so like what they do try to do is the movie tries to juxtapose this idea and it kind of works a little bit. But the movie tries to juxtapose this idea of being passionate about gaming and community, sort of, or like there has to be a balance, which I'm not even sure is true. Like, because some of my, I mean, like people get into games for community sometimes, or to be able to like I have so many fond memories of landing Halo with people and having sleepovers and stuff like that. But whatever, like that's the idea that it's going for. Like gaming escapes are good, but like relationships are more important than video games, whatever, man. Like, but okay, like this is what the movie is saying to a degree. But like Wade isn't looking for an escape. He's not looking for an escape, and the movie tries to tell you that he is, because it's like the movie is ticking boxes about how to tell this story. It's like ticking all the action adventure boxes and all the things that you would want to try and say in this type of a story, which the story is about gaming, right? So it's like doing these things, and so it's like, oh, and Wade is like he's too into the game. He has to be too into the Oasis. He has to like be like too involved, right? And so they're trying to push that idea because in theory that's compelling, but and his goals are not about that. His goals have more to do with what's in real life. He wants to get the Easter egg so he can get lots of money so he can move out of the stacks, which are like the slums in the area where he lives, right? He wants to move out of the stacks, get his aunt out of the stacks, and he wants to be able to basically have a better life. And so that's part of what he's doing. Those are physical, real, tangible goals that he's trying to do. And he's very diligent and vigilant in working on them. So it doesn't really add up to me. Also, when he meets the leading girl of the story, Artemis, in the game, the first thing he wants to do is try and meet her in real life. Like, that's his goal. So again, like, there isn't like this idea of like, it'd be one thing if in the game he didn't want to meet her in real life because he just wanted to keep it in the game. Like, that would make sense. So the movie doesn't, like, it's not really sure what it's doing. It's almost like two pieces of different writing drafts that are left over that don't quite fit together, but they're there in the script. Like, that's how it feels. And the thing is, like, everything about the movie is like on a certain level, like, you'd be tempted to say that it's a good movie because it's structured very carefully and meticulously, and it ticks all the right boxes with the way that it's executed. But if you're really looking at it, like, there's no real character arc. The character isn't forced to change. There's no particularly satisfying confrontation between the hero and the villain. The villain is actually mostly very very inept. He hires a henchman to help him basically to try and stop Wade, and the things that the villain is doing is like interfering with the things the henchman is doing. So it's like literally the villain is like the least he's the least competent person in the entire movie. That's not scary. I'm not afraid the villain's gonna win. It doesn't really go into his character very much either. I didn't relate to the villain at all, but I don't even remember his name. Yeah, I pretty much covered this outline here. Is there anything else I want to say about this movie? I don't know if I'm breaking this down the best, but basically what I'm trying to say is it's not mindless. They're trying to say something. They totally blew it. They totally blew it. It's so like like they're trying to say something deep, and it's so surface level, and it doesn't even like it doesn't mesh well. Like, again, spoiler alert, but like because of stupid things that Wade does, he gets his aunt killed, right? And the scene that's after that is he meets Artemis, the girl he likes, finds out that she really is a girl, and then she's all like, "Oh, Cheyenne, don't look at me because I have a birthmark." And he's like, "No, your birthmark is beautiful." Like, this is the scene that's right after him getting his parents killed. Come on, it doesn't make any sense. There's no attempt to really talk about that. And I mean, maybe they were afraid to go there, but it's like, you killed his, not parents, my bad. Close though. in a sense. I mean, your blood relatives, you're living with them, they're taking care of you. I mean, his aunt's, boyfriend is kind of a jerk, but there are worse things. I love the scene. There's a scene where he confronts the villain and he's like, "You killed my mom's sister!" Like, oh my god. You mean your aunt? Like, you killed... Or you could just say the name of the character. Good grief. You killed my mom's sister. Yeah. Ready Player One. I think I said everything I want to say. I mean, there's more you could say, but this is basically what I'm thinking. The main point I wanted to make. That I may have not made the most eloquently, and now I'm just like rambling because I don't know how to end this video. Okay, alright, here we go. So, here's the little takeaway. Here's the takeaway. People are so focused on ticking all the right boxes and making a movie that's like following a recipe, alright? But it's like writer Brandon Sanderson has said, like, you don't want to be a cook. Or, I mean, you can be a cook, but like, you want to move beyond being a cook, because cooks look at the recipe and they're like, okay, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this, right? And they just grab those things and they use them. But chefs understand why, instead of just mindlessly grabbing those pieces and using them, chefs understand what each individual piece, what each ingredient is intended for, and so they understand how they're going to go together before using them, and so they can adjust or tweak, or like they have a grasp of how it's going to work. The person who wrote this was not being a chef. Well, they weren't in the, you know what I'm saying. I'm not saying they weren't literally a professional chef. I'm just saying, like, you know what I'm saying. Like, they weren't aware of what the ingredients, as like an armchair, like, critiquing is, obviously I could have done better. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like the focus needs to be on the characters and the arcs. And if you have those things, then you don't have to work then having good action and choreography and camera work, all the rest of it enhances the story that's already there, instead of trying to make up for it and trying to take a mediocre script and make a somewhat average movie with it, which is kind of what Ready Player One is. Well, like, if you're not paying attention, you'll have a good time, but if you're paying attention, you'll be like, okay, like, this is not a story. So, yeah. Peace. Alright, so one last thing that I wanted to talk about. So the movie kind of juxtaposes this idea of, like, or rather, it's about the conflict between pop culture and fandoms, right, over here, and then corporations that cynically use those fandoms, right? They use the passion of fans against them and to get what they want, which I'm sure you can relate to. Anyone who follows, who is a big fan of anything, like, you can relate to that, because corporations will do that. But, like, I find that very interesting, because that's the whole thing the story is about, and in a way that's relatable. But it's also ironic, because Ready Player One is pretty much propped up by its references. Almost everything in the movie is some kind of reference or callback or something that's supposed to make you go, oh, I know what that is, and often they're very blatant about it. A lot of different very iconic things have to be said out loud. Characters have to be like, it's Mechagodzilla, it's Gundam. Like, they have to do things like that for some reason. And even though anyone that would even care would, they would know. You don't have to explain it to them. And it just kind of makes me think of Wreck-It Ralph, because Wreck-It Ralph was such a loving homage to video games, and a lot of the nuances and details were very subtle. It wasn't something that was like shoved in your face. You know, things like in the background an R-wing swooping down and hitting Sonic the Hedgehog, who's just casually walking, just hitting him, and then he goes bang, and like his rings fly everywhere. Like that is a really subtle, fun, inventive detail, and it's not shoved in your face. Almost everything about Wreck-It Ralph, and I do have to stress the first Wreck-It Ralph, because there is a sequel coming out soon that is more or less just catering to mainstream pop culture stuff. You know, it's called Wreck-It Ralph Breaks the Internet, which, okay, like, and someone on Twitter mentioned, like it's called Wreck-It Ralph, and the movie's called Wreck-It Ralph Breaks the Internet. You had one job, but I do have to stress it's the first Wreck-It Ralph. It was such a loving homage with so much detail and stuff like that, things that only like hardcore gamers would even know sometimes, and or people that had played very specific older games, like just little details, and that's it. Yeah, it's just like, compared to Ready Player One, it's just a breath of fresh air, because Ready Player One is just shoving this stuff in your face. Like I said, it's almost cynical. It's like, oh, kids like this, here you go, like, here, we'll reference this. And I don't know, it's ironic to me that that's just half of what the movie is, but just a thought.